Hey guys, so welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited for all of you who are joining currently, and uh, without wasting too much time, because there's actually quite a lot of content that we're going to cover in this next 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So I want to just dive in and really see if we can get as deep as possible. So, as I'm sure all of you who are asking, if you're here, you're wondering, how do I open a juice bar, right? Um, so what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about the steps that you need to take to open a juice bar business. This webinar is going to go over things like positioning. How are you going to be positioned within your company and why that's important to consider? Your brand. Okay, why do you how do you create a brand that is unique and stands out in the minds of a customer? Your menu, the importance of your menu, the things you want to think about when it comes to your menu, your business plan, your location, your contracting, training, opening, and so on. So before we dive too much into that content, I just want to give you guys some context who's speaking to you right now. My name is Andrew McFarland. If you don't know me, I have really been into health for quite a long time. I started juicing originally when I was about 16 years old. As many of you out there, I'm sure, if you have a passion for health like I do, once you really get that connection to the power and the healing power of juicing, you just can't stop doing it and you can't stop talking about it. So for me, I found that I always wanted to give people juice. When I made juice for myself, I always made more for other people. And if I was going to meet a friend, I always brought some juice in a bottle with me to gift to them. And so just sharing health was really a part of my DNA for a really long time. And on top of that, I've always had somewhat of the entrepreneurial spirit, you could say. I was always that kid in the neighborhood knocking on people's doors, seeing if I could mow their yard, seeing if I could wash their car, selling lemonade, just doing whatever I can do from the time that I was probably 10 years old. So I've always had this ambition to be self-sufficient and to have my own businesses. But this was really the first business that I could say I took on in a really sincere way, that I really went all in. I had other smaller companies before. I had a t-shirt company when I was 16, but my focus really wasn't 100% there because I was actually acting for most of my younger and adult life. So once I transitioned from being an actor, I moved into having this juice company. So thankfully, because I grew up as an actor, I had a little bit of money saved up to actually start a juice truck. Um, this was a journey. There were so many things that we didn't do right. There were a lot of things we did right, but there were many things that we didn't do right. And hopefully, a lot of the content that I'm sharing with you will help you avoid from making many of the mistakes that I made. Um, we parked on the side of one of the major streets in uh, Los Angeles. Initially, things really were not going well, and not going well is probably an understatement. I mean, we were making about $150 a day on average for our first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that didn't cover our produce cost, at least, much less our labor and our rent for the truck and so on and so forth. So in the beginning, things really weren't looking good. And I definitely had a few moments where I sincerely thought we were not going to make it and that we were going to go out of business. And those were not good times. And so with that, I actually had to make some dramatic shifts and dramatic changes to the way that we approached our business in order to really have the opportunity to succeed. Um, and I'll just share with you what that was for me, especially around the truck. We had the misconception that we were just going to pull up on a random corner and people were going to walk by and see us, and therefore they were going to stop and buy from us. And when you're in a city like Los Angeles, finding parking with a 26-foot vehicle is not an easy thing to do, much less making sure that you're parked in a space that has your target demographic there, meaning people who really, really are inspired to consume your product, and that you're there at the right time of day, and so on and so forth. And so what I realized we really needed to do was to find a location that we could be at consistently, where I knew that there was going to be heavy foot traffic and that we could be there day in and day out to actually build a consistent clientele, because that's really where your business starts to grow. So once we made that change, things really started to thrive. I mean, we got to the point where we started to make as much money as we could make on a truck, because with a space that's so small, you are going to run into inventory limitations. You only have so much refrigeration space, so that means you can only hold so much produce. So for us, we really would max out at about $800 to $1,000 a day, and that was great. But you want to see how much better you can do. And so for us, it really got clear that it was time for us to open our first store. So this is actually an image of our first store location. It is on Sunset and La Brea in Hollywood, California. And if you know anything about this area, it's a very busy area. Sunset Boulevard is one of the most popular streets in Los Angeles. The reason I chose this location was a number of things. One, it wasn't far from where we parked our truck, and we had our truck maybe a mile to 2 miles, maybe a mile and a half away. It was parked there consistently for over a year, and I knew that this would be an easy transition for some of our clients, so that they could really support the birth of this new store, so we could market it at our truck and let them know and have them build some anticipation for the store opening, and that by the time that we open, that they could come visit us and really support the new business. Needless to say, a lot of love went into that store. This is a hand-painted mural. This is a friend of mine and myself. We painted this mural with acrylic paint for 3 months. I would go in there every night from about 6 p.m. during the day sometimes until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. For me, I've always been a very creative person, so in a lot of ways, this is actually probably one of my favorite parts about this entire process, just to know that we could put that much love and creativity into the design and the aesthetics of the space. Another reason that I really felt inspired to create a mural like this was primarily to grab people's attention, because the way that this is positioned, and this is the front-facing wall that everybody who's walking by is going to see, so I felt that it was important to have a lot of color on the wall, and something that was just going to make people just walk into the store. So that was the intention behind this, and it seemed to actually work pretty well. This is me after the mural's finished. There was a young woman who had a blog who decided that she wanted to come in and take a photo of me in the juice bar. And I don't know if you can tell how tired I am in this photo, but I can assure you I was very tired, because during this time of opening the store, I was not sleeping. I was probably sleeping something like 2 to 4 hours a night for months and months and months. A lot of this, truthfully, the reason I was probably working so hard, and I know this to be true actually, was because of how much I didn't know. So everything that I lacked in knowledge, I had to make up for in just pure effort. And after I started to learn and gain more knowledge, everything just got easier. I just had more time. The business started making more money, and therefore having more money gave me more time, and then I could delegate things. But this was just an interesting time. This was early on in opening the store. My Prius, as you can see, was really it was just a glass bottle delivery vehicle. We went through so much glass, and so this is me traveling probably from our storage unit or from one of our bottle vendors to the store, and we would just go through copious amounts of bottles on a regular basis. So after we had that store for about another year and a half, things at that store also started to hit a ceiling. We were doing really, really well, and it was time for our second location. So this is actually a few pictures of our second location being built out, our equipment being delivered, our sign in the new location, and this is our signature fruit and veggie mandala, another piece of artwork that was designed for the sake of grabbing people's attention when they walk by our store. If that's any note I can give you guys on design, just remembering that people are either going to be driving by or walking by your location unless they were marketed to in a different way and your location is destination point, but you want to grab people's attention as much as possible from the street, and I found that this is a really effective way of doing that. So yeah, things at this location also started to blossom. This is me in the store one day with a few of our customers, the community that was building around the store. We had a lot of celebrities. I mean, this is just a picture of a few people that were coming into our store. Hilary Duff, Juliette Lewis, Maya, if you know the singer Maya, Little John. The place was, a notable destination point for a lot of people. And I have to say, for me personally, more than all of these things, the thing that I felt the most inspired by and so grateful for was really the community that was built around the store and the people that we were able to support and help. We actually created a campaign at one point called Juice It Forward, similar to the Pay It Forward, where we allowed our customers and even in-house, we would donate juice to homeless people who were in the area. And for me, more than anything, that was just like, it made it all worth it, because I love to give people health, and I just love to give in general. So as the business was noticeably going well, people started asking me for support. So that's in a large part how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. So let's dive into some of the content of this webinar. So the first question you should ask yourself is, what position do I ultimately want to play in my company, and why? This was a lesson that it really took me a long time to get to. And there's a reason that I start with this, because you, as the individual entrepreneur or in a partnership, you guys are the backbone and foundation of your business. Everything that you guys create is going to be an extension of you. So you want to figure out and really be clear on what things allow you to thrive, what inspires you, what is going to make you wake up in the morning and want to go into your juice business and serve the customers, or maybe not go into your juice business and stay online and do marketing and write blogs about your juice business, or stay at home and shoot videos about your business. None of this, there's no perfect position that you can play. The only perfect position is the one that you're best suited for, right? And for me, what I learned in my business is there's a lot of things that I can do and a lot of things that I can do well, but there's only really a handful of things that I'm really meant to do. And so really for you, getting to the point where you can recognize that in yourself and really be clear about that and working your way towards that. Be aware that it's not the teams with the best players that win. It's the teams who have great players in the right position. I look at soccer, for example. I grew up playing soccer, so I like this analogy. You see teams like Brazil, who has phenomenal players, right? They're known for having some of the best players in the world, but they don't always win. Why? Because you have teams out there who have great players. They may not be as good as the other players, but you have these teams with great players, and everyone is in the right position. And that is what's going to create an amazing team. And you have to know that you really won't be able to succeed if you think that you're going to do everything on your own. It's just not possible at a certain phase in your business. The other thing that I need to say around this is that having the ideal and accomplishing it are two different things. And what I mean by that is you very likely are not going to start in your ideal position. You may start doing a lot of things that you're either not good at and you're going to have to learn, or that you are good at but don't really inspire you and you might despise or you might want to avoid, but it's really a necessary part of the process for you to ultimately get to where you want to go. But it's important to know where you want to go in order to get there, because if you don't have an idea of the role that you're meant to play, it's going to be really hard to strategize in the process of getting there. So the second element that you want to look at is, what is your unique brand position? Now, if there's one thing that I see, and there's many, but if there's one thing that we want to point out right now that I see a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, first-time juice entrepreneurs do a poor job at, it is brand development. Many people out there don't even know what a brand is, so let me explain what a brand is. So many times people confuse branding and marketing. What's the difference? Branding is the impression that a customer, your community, has about your business. Your marketing are the efforts that you take to raise awareness about your business. So no matter what you're doing, you are branding, right? Whether you know it or not, because you are leaving an impression on your customer's mind, and for them, they are going to either talk positively about your business, negatively about your business, or not at all, right? And ideally, you want to create a positive impression. And the word unique is really important here, because we really have to understand what makes your brand different. So many times you see these juice companies and they're maybe a little different, but they're not so noticeably different that it becomes noteworthy. So you really want to find out, what are going to be the things that people talk about when they leave your juice bar. You want to leave an impact on them so intensely that you give them a wow experience. So what is going to give your customers that wow experience? Because word of mouth marketing is always going to be the most powerful, no matter what you do. Because it's one thing for you to say, we have the best juice in the world. We have the fastest customer service. And everybody says that about their business. Everybody's the best and the fastest and the cheapest, everybody. But actually providing an experience to your customers that they can go to other people and say, wow, I went to this place and the aesthetics of the place were like nothing I've ever seen before. Or the way that the bottles looked was like nothing like I've ever seen before. Or the way that the staff treated me and just the level of care and customer service I had. If you can really infuse your brand into every element of your business, now you're doing a good job. So make sure you do that. Make sure you infuse this into every element of your business, the intention of your brand. Does it reflect in the name of the drinks on your menu, in the way that the staff is dressed up, in the way that you guys approach everything? So moving on. The third element that you want to develop is your menu. Your menu is going to dictate so many things in your business. It's going to dictate how easy it is to train your staff, and how easy it is to train your staff is also going to affect your overall labor cost. And I mean to emphasize that not just in that way of training affecting your labor costs, but everything in regards to your labor, because your menu is either going to be efficient and effective and streamlined, or it's going to be really complicated and hard to produce, and therefore increase your labor costs overall. Now, there's many other things that contribute to labor, but your menu is going to be a big one. It's going to dictate how much time it takes to do your inventory, right? And that could increase your labor slightly, but even more so, just the level of of access that you guys are going to have to certain things. Because if you have a menu that is 100 ingredients, outside of it taking you the time to access those 100 ingredients and find out what the levels are and do you need to reorder them, you have to think about vendors actually having all of those ingredients that you need. Sometimes there are shortages. Sometimes there are droughts in certain products you can't find, or there are huge spikes in a specific industry. So I've just found that overall simplicity is key, but you obviously don't want to be so simple that people don't feel that they have things to choose from. So there is a balance, and I've mentioned to people that starting with between 7 to 10, 6 to 7 to 10 juices, you could say, and smoothies is a good place to start. You can always add more as you see the demand increases and you get your operation streamlined, but you don't really need to start with more than that. Your menu is also going to dictate your profit margins, and this is a big one because your profits really are going to create the sustainability of your business. It's going to decide whether or not you stay in business or you don't stay in business. So be clear to create a menu, do your menu costing, and if you haven't, I'm not going to get into how you cost your menu out right now because I have free videos on YouTube. You can just search Andrew McFarland, StartAJuiceBar.com, how to cost out a menu, and you will find how to do that. But most importantly, it's the fact that you actually are doing it and you have a menu that is properly costed. And so just to give you some insight on the margins that you want to maintain is you want to make sure that your drinks on the high side cost you no more than 30% from what you're charging. So if you have a $10 drink, it only costs you $3 to make. And that's on the high side. I usually like to see drinks closer to 20%. Oftentimes it can be harder to get under that unless you're talking about smoothies. With smoothies, it's a little bit easier because your profit margins are just naturally higher when it comes to smoothies. But to be aware, know what your costs are. Your menu is going to dictate those costs. The fourth element to develop is your business plan. Your business plan is your roadmap. Now, there's two things to think about in terms of developing your business plan. Your business plan is either going to be just for you, or it's going to be for you and for your investors. A lot of times, business plans are vehicles for raising money. So, you have to have a great business plan, taking the time, the energy to invest in getting a solid business plan template, because most of the time, if you've never written a business plan before, you can't just write one from scratch because you're not really aware of what goes in a business plan. So accessing one of those and really taking the time to develop a business plan that has a lot of content and information, but also visually is appealing, because as human beings, we like to see as much as we like to read. We want our left brain and our right brain to be stimulated, and there's quite a bit that can go into a great business plan, and we don't have the time to dive into it right now. But just know that your business plan has to get done, whether or not you even are raising money. You might have money that's saved up or money from family, or you might have investors who don't need to see one. I still highly recommend that you do a business plan because it will force you to think about all of the intricacies of your business. Now, with that, I also want to say that many things will not turn out like you plan them to, and that's okay. When you are driving along the road, you have a route set up before you just jump in your car and just drive. You know where you're going, and you have a general idea of how you're going to get there. And yes, along the way, you're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to find out things weren't the way that you thought they were, and you're going to make a right, you're going to make a left, you're going to pause for a moment, you're going to do all the things that you need to do in order to get to where you're going. So make sure you do a business plan. The fifth element that you want to look at for your business is your location. Location, location, location. It is so important. It is, I would dare to say, the most important element of your business, because we all know, we've seen great businesses in bad locations fail, and we've seen bad businesses in great locations succeed. So this really tells you how important this choosing a great location is. So what goes into finding a great location? What are the things that actually make a great location? So a few things that make a great location. The first thing is street visibility. Sort of similar to what I touched on previously in terms of what I did creatively as a strategy to gain people's attention. You have to be aware you're a brick and mortar business. People are going to be driving by you. People are going to be walking by you, most likely. You need them to see you. And so I've seen locations at one point that I was considering, but like they're behind a tree and you can't really cut this tree down and it's going to cover the sign. Not a great location. It's around a corner. It's not on a major street. Okay, maybe not the best location. You really want to make sure that it's street visible. That you can get people's attention if you need to. So in that regard, also think about your signage. The next element is your parking. I live in a city like Los Angeles. Some of you guys are going to be in places where this is a non-issue, no matter where it is. People are going to have good parking. But if you're in a major city like New York, Chicago, if you don't have copious amounts of walking traffic, you need parking. Even if you do have copious amounts of walking traffic, if you can gain parking, it's a plus. In cities like New York, you don't really need parking because everybody walks, and that's not going to be the thing to make or break a business. So you have to just know a lot of things right now that I'm mentioning. These are things that might be supplemental or they might be totally necessary. But if you can find a location with parking, that's always a good thing. The next thing is a patio. Patios are nice when the weather is nice. People like to sit outside. It's a beautiful thing. Once again, I should say not a requirement. It doesn't make or break a business most of the time, but the more things you have working in your favor, the odds of your success obviously always increase. So if you can find a location with a patio, wonderful. And most importantly, you are in an area that has a high demand for your product. This is the most important thing, because if you're in an area that won't support your product, you're not going to survive. And so you have to do research, and this either is going to happen from you just simply sitting down and talking to people in your neighborhood, walking into areas, or I should say businesses that have clientele that you imagine to be similar to yours, and start asking them, are they interested in a juice bar? Where do they live? Find out, because you really want to make sure that people are inspired to buy what you need. And when I say high demand, it might you want to make sure that your market's not saturated. 9 times out of 10, we are in a time right now where the demand for juice is increasing, thankfully, and you're not very likely to be in an area where juice bars are saturated, but it's always possible. So really be clear that there are enough clients who can actually afford to buy your product. So once you sign the lease on your location, what's next? It's time to start breaking ground. That means that the 6th major element of opening a juice bar is contracting. Now, we could go so deep and we could talk about contracting for days and days and days. Some of you, once again, aren't going to have to deal with contracting in the same way that others of you are. Contracting is a very involved process. It could really require quite a bit of permitting. In the US, if you're going to do contracting and building out in a commercial space, you need to have a licensed general contractor to pull the permits. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to do the work themselves specifically. They can hire what's called subcontractors to do the work, but you have to have someone with a license to oversee the project. Now, what are some of the things that require pulling permits? Because if you're going to paint the walls in a location, you don't really need a permit. If you are going to change a countertop, you don't really need a permit. Now, if you're going to create a countertop or knock down a wall and put up a wall, change the electrical, do some plumbing work, change the ceiling. For those situations, you need a permit. Um, so there's a thing called Angie's List when it comes to hiring a contractor. There's a thing called Angie's List, and that's a place where you can do some research on contractors. I always recommend that if you're going to hire a contractor, to get some references, find out some of the locations that they've done, talk to those business owners, because the truth is, if you talk to somebody and they didn't have a great experience, they're going to tell you. And hiring your contractor is going to be one of your major expenses. The build out phase could take you a long time, or it can be quick depending on who you work with and who you hire. So it's really important to get this element of your business right. And the last major element to dive into before you open is hiring and training your staff. I want to say to invest in your staff with your time and your money. They are one of the backbones of your business. You cannot nurture your staff enough. Um, Having a great staff is going to make your life so much easier. It's going to reduce the amount of things that you have to manage when you are not physically present at your business. Um, it's going to reduce the turnover at your business. Really take the time to build a community, a strong connection. Take time to ask your staff questions on how you can improve your business, on how you can make their lives easier, how you can really overall support them. I always got into the practice when I was leaving my location to check in with whoever was there and just ask them, is there anything that I can do for you? Because one of my favorite quotes is by Martin Luther King, and he says, the greatest leader amongst you will be the servant of all of you. So in order to really, really serve your staff and to have them be the best that they can be, you really have to be there to support them, find out how you can make their lives easier, their jobs easier, and take care of them. Now, there's a lot of specifics when it comes to paying your staff, and labor costs are high, so you really have to find that balance between what you can afford and also, being able to make sure that they are inspired to be there and they can even just afford their livelihood to be there. But do your best. I can't say enough about investing in your staff, training your staff. Some people might ask the question, how many days should I take to train my staff before we open? In a large part, this is going to depend on a few things. It's going to depend on how experienced the staff that you're hiring is in food service and in specifically the juice bar business. And then two, how much money you can spend on training. And then three, how complex your operation is. Because if you have an operation where you guys are making vegan ice cream and juice and smoothies and salads and wraps and quinoa bowls and who knows, which I don't recommend that you do that, for instance, but I'm just making a point to emphasize that a lot of it's going to depend on that. For me, I like to have training of at least 2 days before you do a soft opening, and one day to strictly just talk to your staff, have them get to know one another, have them get familiar with the space, organize the space, and then another day to actually get into making drinks and going through more operations. But that's been more my process. So finally, it's time to open. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to opening is your opening strategy. So there's two different ways to approach this. You can have a soft opening or you can have a grand opening. I personally am a fan of doing both. I don't like to open juice bars and just have a grand opening day one, because the intention of a grand opening is actually to build a lot of buzz, have a lot of people come in, but you don't want your staff to go into shock because of just the overwhelm of going from 0 to 100, and you also don't want your customers to have a negative experience, right? You want their first experience to be just so overwhelmingly beautiful that they don't stop coming back from that day forward. Um, so my recommendation is that when it comes to opening your business, you start with a soft opening. And what a soft opening is where you might invite family and friends only, or you might do an unannounced opening. You might just open your doors and have people who walk by come in. You might do a little bit of marketing, but it's not to the same degree that a grand opening happens. And like I said, this is going to save you the overwhelm of a grand opening, which you can do also. You can plan a grand opening for 2 weeks after, a month after, who knows, 3 months after, where whenever you guys feel ready to handle a larger volume of business. Because the truth is you don't really ever know what you don't know, and you don't know how many people are going to show up at a grand opening. Exactly. So you might not be as prepared as you'd like to be. And it's important, as I mentioned, to really give everybody a great first time experience. So really want to just say thank you for taking the time to spend with me here and to just dive into some of the steps, some of the major steps of what it takes to open a juice bar. I hope you found a lot of this information insightful, but I also just want to say that this was just an overview. There is quite a bit more that can go into opening a juice bar, and I really want to give you guys access to a lot of this information. So this is for those of you who really want to go deep. I've created an online video course, and this course will go over everything that we discussed in greater depth and detail, and so much more. The course has lessons on equipment. There's literally, I give you access to quotes that I have from vendors that I've purchased from, so you'll see how much I personally spent on my equipment, and even more so. So there's almost an hour long video on just equipment. You'll have videos on managing labor. What are some of the strategies? What are some of the things that you want to think about? What are some of the percentages that you really want your labor cost to be at? POS system. So this stands for point of sale system. I talk about some of my favorite point of sale systems, how you can access them, why I like them, and also the cost of these point of sale systems. I talk about location design. I have a lesson that's actually showing you the blueprints for one of my locations, how it's designed, where the equipment is, and why I specifically designed the location the way that I did. There's a whole lesson on administration as well to go over some of the back end elements, the things that you want to think about when it comes to the admin portion of your business, and so much more. In this course, you'll also gain access to many bonus videos. So I have bonus videos on, one is titled The $100,000 Juice Bar Secret. And it has that title because truthfully what I share in this video could literally save you $100,000 when it comes to starting your juice bar. I have a video on 3 ways to raise money for your juice bar. So I know many of you out there are in a place where you don't have money and you're not sure on how to get it. This video will go over 3 ways that you can raise money for your juice bar business. And then lastly, I've created a video on how to run your juice business remotely. You will get to the point where you want to travel or you can't be there all the time. Something could happen in your life where you just are required to not be physically present. And it's important for you to be aware of how to have checks and balances in place so you could make sure that your business is running as smoothly as if you were there. And if that wasn't enough, I will also give you access to many written templates and checklists to help you run your business. Okay, many of these documents took me over 5 years to create, truthfully. So you're looking at things like your business plan template. Okay, this business plan template walks you through every single portion of your template and what information you want to put in those areas specifically. Inventory templates. What kind of things are going to be in your inventory, and how should an inventory sheet actually be laid out? Employee training guides, this is actually a piece of paperwork that I created much later on in my business, and I wish I had it so much sooner to streamline the training process and to make sure that the people who were doing the training were covering everything within that training process. There's also an employee manual template. This is about probably a 40 to 60 page document with so many elements that are going to help you when it comes to hiring employees and being able to hand them this document so that they know what to expect. And it also alleviates many of the questions that employees will have when they first initially start working with you. And there's also more on top of those templates I mentioned as well. So one of the greatest pitfalls I see with budding entrepreneurs is they don't invest in themselves. And I can only say this from experience. I'm observing it, but I really observed it in myself. It took me so long to really understand the value of investing in myself. I was one of those people, primarily because of, truthfully, if I'm totally honest, because of pride, that I thought I was just going to figure it out all by myself. I'm smart enough. I can figure out how to do everything. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, the amount of money that it cost me in sheer time and in actual money because of either product loss, you could say spoilage, or labor costs that were too high, so on and so forth. I would have made that money tenfold had I invested in mentorship when it came to me opening my business, and or a course like this, because the truth is none of this stuff existed, and I don't know if there at the time there were even any juice bar mentors to begin with. But I do know that overall I had the mentality that I was just going to figure it out by myself, and that I didn't really need to ask people too many questions, and I wasn't in a place where I was as porous, as you could say, meaning receptive, as to really looking for guidance and seeking guidance and really understanding the value of guidance as I am now. So that's the first pitfall that I see most budding entrepreneurs make. The second thing is really just this, putting things together and trusting that it'll work, just hoping that it's going to work. The unfortunate thing about that is it doesn't work 90% of the time, right? There's a reason that 90% of small businesses fail. And it's not because when someone's starting a business, they're not in the right market. It's not because they don't personally have a passion for it. It's usually because they don't do the right things. They don't understand what they don't understand. And they approach their business just believing that it's going to be successful, that just their sheer passion alone is going to take them all the way. And unfortunately, it doesn't. The other reason that most people attempting to start a business fail is they really don't know what they don't know, right? So there are things that you know that you don't know. We could say you don't know how to write a business plan. You don't know how to create a great menu. You don't know where your perfect location is going to be. Those are things that you know that you don't know. But there are also things that you don't even know that you don't know. And those are the things that really have the likelihood of putting you out of business. So it's important to gain awareness on these things. And the only way that I've seen that you can gain awareness for these things is through doing research, through connecting with people like me, watching webinars like this, continuing to educate and investing in your education. When you gain the proper knowledge on how to run this business, it will easily increase your chances for success by 3 times or more. It's not a coincidence that people who are serial juice bar entrepreneurs who have 2, 3, and more locations, all their future locations have higher rates of success. Why is that? It's because they just did it. They know what works, they know what doesn't work. The information that I'm giving you guys in this course comes from experience, from successfully running my own company for a number of years. So, in truth, a course like this has a value of over $3,000. But don't worry, it's not going to cost you $3,000. The good news is, it's not even going to cost you 10% of that. I'm going to give you guys access to everything that I mentioned before, the lessons that go into much of what we spoke about in this webinar and more in greater depth. You're going to have access to all the bonus videos that I mentioned as well. You're going to have access to written templates that literally took me over 5 years to create. You're talking about employee manual templates, business plan templates, employee training guides, par lists, opening and closing checklists. You will get all of that and more for just $197. On top of that, I'm so confident that you're going to find such an extreme value in this course that I'm offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. Yes, that's right. So for whatever reason, if you take the course and you get to the end and you say, hey, you know what? I didn't see the value in this course. It wasn't what I needed. For whatever reason, go ahead and send me an email within that 30-day period, and I'll give you your money back, no questions asked. So essentially, this is risk-free. For those of you who are ready to dive in, go to StartAJuiceBar.com, click on the e-course tab, and you can access your course and start it today. All right, that brings us to the completion of our webinar. I'm really grateful that you guys took the time to allow me to share a lot of the information that I was able to share with you. I hope you found a lot of value in it. As always, wishing you guys a lot of success in your journey, and don't ever hesitate to reach out to me if there's anything that I could support you guys with. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Take care.